Hey guys, Matthew here once again, and with the kind of maybe last build of the league, who knows, because Ziz probably killed the league with his Gauntlet event, I did decide to go kind of all out with a little bit of experimentation and budget, and try out the new champion with Celestial Brace gloves that give you more Fortify, because they have been quite expensive the entire league. But I finally decided we could afford to do it. Maybe one of the last builds of the league, who knows. They were 15 divines to begin with, and then if you make them 10 fortify, they are about 30 divines. So there's still nothing crazy, honestly, but they are very rare at this point and a pretty big budget item. Regardless, we did that, and I did a whole bunch of other dumb shit to experiment with this character that cost many, many divines, but the character I ended up landing on wasn't that expensive, except for basically the Celestial Brace, and it ended up being double strike of momentum, so the boys, once again, with extreme amounts of flailing, so the emote that does flail, and it was actually pretty damn good. So the new champion does scale off of Fortify, gives you more attack speed, or increased attack speed for Fortify stacks, as well as that, more armor and evasion for your Fortify. So if you actually go over the top of your cap of 20 Fortify, you can get a lot of extra armor evasion for your Perseverance, if you want to use Perseverance to scale a champion. We also get a lot of attack speed, and to begin with, I did go very all out and went up to 50 Fortify. To do that, you can do Celestial Brace gloves themselves, you can do a Timeless Jewel on the tree, you spec the Fortify, and you can also use the Rune Graft to give yourself extra 2 Fortify from the glove buff Rune Graft. Then I also used a replica Badge of the Brotherhood, and that got me to 50 Fortify. But the problem is, Badge of the Brotherhood is pretty uncomfortable and not very fun to use because with Perseverance, you'll constantly be removing your own endurance charges, and it gets a bit clumsy. So I got rid of that thing. I ended up settling on about 41 Fortify while stacking Frenzies and endurance charges. To begin with, I did want to be very, very thick on this character and then attempt to make trauma stacking kind of a thing with just lots of fizz damage reduction, lots of less fizz damage taken, and it was working okay. Like, I really wanted to scale off of a Hatred Merc and then do trauma stacking with an axe. But I never really got a Hatred Merc, and trauma stacking, even with all my damage reduction, still ended up getting me kind of fucking killed. So past 50 stacks and all the way up to 100 stacks of trauma, it was definitely starting to hurt, and my intuition was saying that the best version of this build is probably using Rakiatas, and then I ended up pivoting into that. So the final version that you're seeing here is a Rakiatas version of the build, but it was after doing some pivots and reworks, and that's usually not the way that I make a build the best after pivoting into it. So I have no doubt there's some inefficiencies and, not the best way of building this character, but the end result is still pretty damn good. So with this, we have a lot of attack speed, we have a lot of armor, something like 100,000 armor, 100,000 evasion. That's where a lot of our damage comes from. Rakiatas is giving us a good amount of flat, and then we inverse our purities to make the enemy bosses and just general enemies have extra, or negative extra resists, because we're inverting them with Rakiatas. So we don't need any penetration, and it is just the Rakiatas thing that a lot of people have been doing, primarily with Smite, I would say, from what I've seen, except we are doing double strike, we're a champion, and we use Smite for a little bit of extra damage buff at times. The end result was actually pretty damn fun. It has been, I don't know, maybe a year since I last did double strike, something like that, and it was pretty fucking fun getting back into it, having the additional strikes, being thick enough to stand still and cop lots of shit from various tough enemies out there, and just have a very fast attacking character. I would have liked a bit more striking, I would have liked a bit more thickness, as per the last character, which was a very thick 15,000 ES CI build. It's still so much better to have something like that up your sleeve. This one has a huge amount of effective HP thanks to being damn near immune to physical damage, having lots of endurance charges, lots of fortify, not capped on suppress because that was going to be too hard for me to do, so I got some decent suppressed chance, something like 60%, but you know, it helps a little bit here or there, and some good recovery as well. I've got life gain on hit, I've got good leech, and then I've got some instant leech. So all of that did make a pretty nice character that still kind of pales in comparison to an ES build, but it was still fun for what it was, and the new champ is actually pretty impressive, I do think. It took on all content, pretty much all content. I did a bunch of tier 17s, some of those were deathless. Did a couple of simulacrums. One of them I died a good few times on. The second one I ended up clearing all 15 without dying, except for like on one Kosis, I think. And it was pretty good because armor evasion, very good for this type of a setup. My Merc is a haste grace Merc, so she's giving me most of the grace in my setup, but she's only level 75, so she would die occasionally, maybe to some Uber bosses, to some tough simulacrum waves, and also to some tier 17 crap. So aside from that, she was doing pretty damn well because our Fortify does spread to her as well. So we did some 17 simulacrums, did a few little Uber bosses. This is Eater of Worlds. I bricked my first set on him, but I decided to go back and try again. Because I was kind of limit testing to begin with. I was seeing if I could tank certain things, and I figured out that, yeah, probably not. I can definitely tank the tentacles, definitely tank the writhing mass, but the laser without capped suppress I don't think I can tank, and without immunity to elements. And on top of that, on my first attempt, my Becky did die. And she is my source of grace, which is a huge source of my damage. So without that, it does get a bit tougher. I ended up killing him this time, deathless even, I think. But it's still such a frustrating fight for a character that is pretty painfully melee. So as per usual, melee, not very great for pure Ubering, but still doable. I do think that the character could have got more DPS for what it is. Like, I did okay with the stacking, but and the Rakiatas, but it still probably should be more given the amount of money I spent, but it was still just trying to make certain memes work, I think, and then pivoting into them, which made things difficult. If I went completely with the trauma stacking and the hatred stacking, I think it could have done quite a bit more damage, but maybe the end result would have been less comfortable thanks to the self-inflicted damage. Yeah, I think that's about it. So the Celestial Brace, unfortunately, very rare and very expensive. I don't think it's completely necessary for a build like this. You could instead ignore Celestial Brace and then build around Badge of the Brotherhood a bit better. As long as you're getting something like 15 to 20 Fortify stacks over the top of the normal 20, I think Champion can be very powerful and pretty damn versatile as well. So with that, let me go ahead and show you how I built the character to its completion here. So here's the character, FLAIL. Somehow got that character name. I don't know how, FLAIL is the Kermit emote where it's flailing around doing lots of sword attacks. I don't know, I decided to just like see if it was taken before I went any further, and it wasn't. So FLAIL, pretty insane. Level 94 champion. So the name of the game is of course flailing, and the best way to showcase that is to take that off and see what it's like with max stacks like that. As you can see, we go pretty damn hard with attack speed. With my current setup, fully buffed, I think I'm at about almost 20 attacks a second. While I was leveling, I was going much harder and more all out with the attack speed memes, and I was hitting like 35 to 40 attacks per second with dual wield and all kinds more attack speed. But in a more balanced build, it's something like 20 attacks a second with double strike of momentum. Very fun skill, and also calling in the Val double strike, you'll notice throughout the video, throughout the boss fights and stuff. When we get to press this button, we get a fuck ton of extra damage, so it's a lot of fun to call in the boys and fuck shit up together. The champion is the name of the game here, and it is stacking Fortify. So this thing got buffed or changed, whatever you want to say. Increased attack speed per fort above 20, and then 3% more armor and evasion per fort above 20. You also have your max fort now, so you don't actually have to like gain it at any time, which is super convenient for lots of boss fights that have phases and stuff. So that stuff combined is pretty damn strong on the champion. You spec a bunch of Fortify wherever you can. Use a timeless jewel to get a few points here or there. This is a very basic one, so we've got one there, and one there. I think when I was leveling, I was using a 4 or a 5, but then to do a practical one, I went back down. And as I said, you can do a Badge of the Brotherhood, which will turn your endurance charges into Fortify stacks. But thanks to Perseverance, which is where we're getting a lot of our damage from, when your melee hits which stun Fortify, that unfortunately works negatively with the Badge of the Brotherhood, which I'll show you now. Which in theory it shouldn't, but it absolutely does. 21% chance to lose an endurance charge when you gain Fortify. So we're at max Fortify. We're never gaining or losing it, but when we're like stunning enemies, it's still for some reason is just counting as gaining, and we lose endurance charges. So if you're going to use that, you need to make sure your endurance charges are very reliable. You can do that through, an enduring composure. I've currently got this. You can do it through an enduring composure with Megalomaniac. You can also maybe spec some of this. You can maybe be like a jug for various reasons to bring up, just various ways of endurance stacking. But yeah, for this, it just felt a little too uncomfortable. I didn't want to put on Ralakesh boots either because it didn't really make sense when I was trying to get more endurance from our frenzies. Because for my ascendancy, I did steal the Slayer Masterful form so that we have our frenzies equal to our endurance, or vice versa. So the best way to do this, I figured, was to stack some frenzy charges and then turn them into endurance and then be thick that way. And initially, yes, I wanted to turn all my endurance into fort, but then it just didn't really work out. So I was kind of stuck just doing this stacking method regardless. So in the end, I went with Ashes of the Stars, which gives us quality to our skills because it's good for double strike of momentum. A 30 qual would give me another 1% more per each stage, but I couldn't be fucked buying a 30 qual, so here we are. It's not a bad amulet for this thing. It may even still be best in slot, but yeah, kind of just sort of pivoted into it with Rakiatas as well. So treat enemy monster LE res values as inverted. The tech this league is to have a couple of purities that you associate with your own damage, so lightning and cold. As you can see over here, that is 70 pre-buff for all my own aura stuff, 70 lightning res that I gain, and we then give to the enemy thanks to this one over here. Auras from your skills also affect enemies, so the enemies get that. The enemies have a lot of extra res, and then use Rakiatas to turn those res against them. That's been somewhat of a common thing to do this league, and it's the first time getting around to doing it, and it's pretty good. I think it means that you can probably build a character like this based around Rakiatas to do just about any attack skill that swords are allowed to use. So there is that happening. Celestial Brace, like I said, if you just buy a basic one, any sort of Fortify, it's going to cost 15D. A 10 max is going to cost you 30D, or just divine it yourself, which is what I did, and it still ended up costing about 30D. It's, yeah, decent. It's not strictly worth it, I don't think. You don't have to go out of your way to wear this into a build like this. You could instead do like the Badge of the Brotherhood thing and make sure your endurance charges are a bit more reliable. So it can be, I think, a bit more budget, but yeah, this is kind of how it is. And then also armor evasion. You just try and get a lot through a conquest lamella. Crafted this guy with just some dense fossils. You then lock prefixes and do a fizz reroll. So for the suffixes, it can only do fizz damage reduction, and that's what we got there. Aside from that, yep, Perseverance, yep, that. Just a very basic hat with some suppress. I picked up this ring, which is completely fucking insane, for 1 divine, like a month ago. I saw it for pretty cheap, and I didn't want anyone else buying it, so I thought, hey, I'll take that off the market. Finally getting around to using it, basically because it covers a lot of my int on this build, so that's the main reason for doing this. It gives some res, which I don't really need, since I'm very overcapped on that. I basically just need some fire res. But then, yeah, life, int, so why the hell not? And then I made this guy with buying a fracture. All you got to do is then harvest reroll chaos until you get something decent as another suffix. Lock the suffixes as long as there's a spare suffix, and use a veiled orb, hopefully hitting a chaos roll. So this takes care of all of my chaos res in the build. I only just put this thing on recently, so prior to that I was doing minus 13 chaos. And that feels really bad on a build like this for any sort of chaos damage over time. So this makes it a lot smoother and pretty worthwhile. So yeah, there's not too much else to say. That's kind of the build. Like I said, this rune graft over here will give you an extra 2 Fortify on your gloves because it does increase the bonus from your gloves. So if you've got perfect pair of Celestial Brace, keep that in mind. Otherwise, just, yep, Fortify and Life and Rage and Sword stuff. And I think being non-crit is maybe even better than crit here because I did struggle to get my crit up pretty badly with all the points I'm using. But I decided to still go for the crit anyway. Over here, we've just got Calamitous and Sure-Footed Striker. And my Watcher's Eye gives some Vitality, Life Gain on hit, and Suppress while affected by Grace. So even with that, with my Merc that does a lot of Grace and Haste, I still only have something like 60% Suppress. I was hoping to cap Suppress, but just couldn't manage to do it with everything else in the end. My Merc is mostly there for giving us a big fat Grace. And that's pretty much it. So she's a Grace bot. She gives it haste as well, but it's mostly for Grace because as you can see, while I'm standing around town without frenzy charges, that's currently what we're dealing with. With the Grace, I'm at about 110,000 evasion as well. So yeah, pretty thick setup and character, and can recommend looking into a champ if you have the available resources to make Fortify kind of cool. But I think it can be very versatile setup that can do just about anything. So with that, I think that's pretty much all I'll say. I'll leave you guys with my rip clip from the Gauntlet. I have to be away for the weekend to be at the biggest climbing competition in Brisbane, Boulderfest, once again. So I'll be there for 2 or 3 days. I'm going to live stream it tomorrow, so my usual time slot, but I'll be streaming climbing. If you want to go watch that, my real life climbing, I'm going to be doing stuff. So I have to get out of here for that, but I did try the Gauntlet just for the few hours that I was allowed to play, and I was actually kind of winning for a bit. I was the world first level 10, and then I was rank 11 or so. I was killing every single merc, I was doing shit inefficiently, and this was kind of the end result. So I'm going to leave you with that. If you feel like watching that, thank you very much for watching, and see you guys next time. A Thunder Quiver, ooh. The newest Becky for the team. Dude, this Becky's gonna fuck ass. And quite likely mine to begin with. Hire, replace, Toxicologist. Oh my god! Oh, thank God. We all saw that coming. We knew she was going to do some damage. So, it's all good.